Hey now, and welcome to the City Off Campus podcast with your two favorite hosts, Sammy Sommerfeld and Jack McFarland. Today, we've got former Ohio State national champion and NFL tight end, as well as a Naples native, Jeff Heuerman, with us today. How's everything going with you, Jeff?
It's going good, brother. Can't complain. Everything's good. I got an 8-month-old crawling around in the other room. So if it gets too loud, let me know. I can go quiet him down a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So my first question for you is, growing up in Naples, Florida, you start off as a hockey player. So how did you get into hockey? Just what was that experience like?
Hockey, I just started playing hockey since, before I could even remember. It was like the first thing I ever did. Probably 2-3 years old. I started, started on roller blades at 5, 6. I started roller hockey playing in, what was the name of that? I forget the name of that park. It was kind of right around from my mom's dentist's office.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. The one off of Mockley. Yeah.
That's it. So, I started playing like roller hockey there, and one thing led to another, and then I got into ice hockey. Then I got, real serious into ice hockey, and then I ended up moving up to Michigan, and lived up there for a year and played on a team up there. And then, I got kind of burnt out. I had 2 younger brothers that, they were still living in Florida, and I was living up in Michigan, and my family was down in Florida still. I was living with the Billet family, and, I kind of got burnt out from it. And I said, you know what, screw this. So I kind of went home and gave up hockey, and then, gave football a shot my freshman year of high school, and had no idea what I was doing or what I was getting into, or, I filled out the sign-up sheet and showed up the first day at 6'4", 170 pounds, soaking wet with these size 15 feet. You really didn't run a whole lot growing up because I was always skating. So it took me a little while to kind of get the feel of running with my big feet. But one thing led to another, and it all worked out. So,
what position, when you initially started playing football, did you want to play? Because everybody wants to be like quarterback or something immediately. Like, you didn't really have an introduction early on to football. So what did you want to be right away?
So it's funny. It's actually funny you asked that, because there's a funny story that goes along with that. So my next door neighbor growing up was the big football player. He played Pop Warner. He was like the best Pop Warner player and everything like that. And, so when I finished playing hockey, come play, try out for football. So on the sign-up sheet, they have, what requested position would you like to play? And I didn't know really any of the positions. And so he told me to write down cornerback. And so, here I am, 6'4", size 15 feet, coming from a basketball family, and I signed up for corner. Was my number one listed position. I think I put 2 as like quarterback, because I knew quarterback, obviously. But he told me, put corner as number 1, just screwing with me. So I actually signed up to play corner my freshman year of high school, but obviously that didn't last long.
Did you have to do any defensive back drills, and then they quickly realized you weren't a corner, or did you just get it figured out by talking to them?
They stopped me before I even got to that point. I showed up, they didn't even let me get to that point.
What was your experience like playing at Barron, and developing as a player? And did you, all I have to say here too is, did you ever consider going to the better school, being Gulf Coast? That's all I have to ask too.
No, I never considered going to Gulf Coast. I actually fucking hated Gulf Coast. I couldn't stand anybody that went to Gulf Coast. It was like a huge wall, you were either on the Gulf Coast side of Naples, or you're on the Barron side of Naples. There wasn't a whole lot of interaction between the Gulf Coast and Barron kids back then. I don't know how it is now, but they were pretty cliquey, the high schools. So no, I never considered going to high school. I was zoned for Barron. And like I said, I had no intentions of even playing football. When I finished playing hockey, I just wanted to hunt and fish. I grew up hunting and fishing down there, so much, and I gave up hockey, and, I just wanted to hunt and fish and kind of go to high school. And my dad was like, that ain't going to happen. You're going to either get a job or you're going to play another sport. And I was like, well, shit, I don't want to get a job. So, you know, I'll give football was like the first sport coming up in the fall, you know, so I was like, well, I'll just give football a shot. And, you know, if I hate it, then I'll just, you know, I'll give another sport a shot. So that's kind of where I went, and football kind of stuck. So.
What's your favorite catfish bowl memory?
Oh man, catfish bowl memory. I don't even know. You guys sucked so bad all the time. It was like,
is that your school against Gulf Coast or whoever is at the Catfish Bowl?
It was like, I mean, they always sucked, you know.
So it wasn't even a rivalry. It was just a game that they pegged on the schedule, and they're like, "Hey, look at this!" Like
they made it up.
Battle for Naples.
Hey, we got good after he left.
It was like always a catfish bowl, and it was always like, okay, whatever. We win it every year. You guys never win it. You're not even competitive really in it. But no, we always had good games. That was the one thing I do remember is like whenever Gulf Coast Barron played each other, even if you guys weren't that good or whatever, like there was always still like, it was the biggest game, you know, one of the biggest games of the high school football season because there were big schools and everybody would show up. The fans would be packed. Good old Friday Night Lights, man.
Yeah. When you played against Naples, did you ever play against Carlos Hyde? Were you guys in high school at the same time?
Yeah, I think my sophomore year was his senior year because he's 2 years older than me. So yeah, my sophomore year when I played varsity, we played Naples, I played against him. But yeah, I mean, that's another thing is, you know, as much as I rag on Gulf Coast, there's not a whole lot of room for us to talk because we haven't beaten Naples in like, you know, 25 years or something.
So what was it like? I'm going to ask you about your recruitment journey next, but going to OSU and being teammates with another Naples guy, what was that like for you?
Oh, it was cool. You know, Carlos and I are boys. I mean, since we got to Ohio State, just kind of, you had that Naples connection. And then, we've been boys ever since. We caught this huge fish. I thought I had a picture of it around here somewhere. We had caught Carlos and I, because my sophomore year was the year we had the bowl ban, and we couldn't go to the bowl game. So it was, you know, it sucked, but it was also kind of sweet because we got like a full month off, like a normal Christmas break, you know, for which as an athlete, student athlete, you never get that, especially football, you know, because you're always playing, you're going to a bowl game. So we went down to Naples for that break, and God, I probably had like 6 or 7 teammates come down because, you know, it's December and everybody else is from like Indiana or, you know, like Pennsylvania and stuff. And like, you're not going to hang out with them in Pennsylvania and shit. So, God, I had like a crew come down to that. It was like a frat house for like 3 weeks. Guys were just like, you know, cycling in and out. Like they'd come in and then another couple would leave. You know? And so that was the bowl ban. So anyways, Carlos and I, we were down there and we caught this huge tarpon, like 220-pound tarpon. And it was pretty sick. So, you know, Carlos and I, we've had some good memories together. I don't know if you know Juno Prudhomme. He was there. He was in Naples, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They were good. They won states, didn't they, that year?
Yeah.
I think they did.
So what was your recruitment journey like being a kid from Naples, Florida, which isn't, you know, the biggest scene for, you know, big time recruits? So, you know, what besides Ohio State, what was it like, you know, getting looked at by other teams? Who were you kind of looking at besides Ohio State, and what sold you on Ohio State?
Oh God, you know, my dad and I, we visited, you know, a bunch of schools. You know, we went to LSU. I loved LSU. You know, we kind of went all over the place. We took a big Midwest tour one spring break. So we flew into like, I don't even remember. We flew in, we hit like Michigan, Purdue, Ohio State, Indiana, like, you know, we kind of hit like all the Big Ten schools. We went on like for like a whole week. My dad and I just drove around and kind of visited all these schools. And then, you know, our last stop was Ohio State for the spring game. And man, it was like, you know, it sounds fucking corny, like saying like, oh, like the first time I walked out, you know, like of the tunnel, like down onto the field, like I was like, oh, you know, this is where I want to go. But that's kind of how it went, you know, like, because it was a spring game. So I didn't go to all those other school spring games, you know? So like, I didn't get that like game day atmosphere type, you know, that whole feeling. But I'll tell you what, man, when I walked down on the field at Ohio State for the first time, it was just like so dope. And I was like, holy shit, you know, and like as a kid, you know, from Naples, and, you know, I never grew up in the football world. So, you know, I spent very little time in big football stadiums and things like that. And, you know, Ohio State, they put 90,000, 95,000 people in there for a spring game, you know, like, I mean, for a spring game, those people are there. So, you know, walking out there and seeing all that, I was like, man, this is where I'm going. You know, like I don't really care about anything else. You know, my dad went to Michigan, and you know, there were just all these other schools, and I was like, you know what, I don't even want to go to, you know, check any of them out. So I came home from the game on Sunday. We flew back, and then Monday morning, I told Coach Ivy, my high school coach, I said, you know, this is where I want to go. I want to go to Ohio State. And he made me sure, like, he was like, look, you're not going to be one of those guys that commits and then decommits, and or like commits and then takes visits elsewhere. Like, that's one thing that, like, one of the best, you know, one of the best things he ever did for me was, he was like, look, when you commit, you're committed to a school, you know, it's like, you're getting married to that school. So he told me, you better be sure, because, you know, we're not going to do the whole, you know, decommit, you know, I'll play that game. So, you know, when I committed, I knew I was set, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Was it hard for your dad to accept you being a Buckeye?
A little bit. You know, we were getting like mail in you know, we were getting mail from all the Michigan people saying, you know, he's disowned from the, you know, the Michigan fans, and you know, saying how could he ever let me go there, and like just things like that. But, you know, he got over it. You know, he wanted, you know, I mean, because that was the Rich Rod era in Michigan. Nobody wanted to go to fucking Michigan with Rich Rod there, you know? I mean,
right.
That was just the reality of it. I mean, there were guys that my dad, you know, because my dad went to Michigan. He was friends with a lot of the, you know, football players when they were there. And, you know, the Michigan alumni football players were all saying, like, you don't want to go, you know, you don't want to go there with Rich Rod right now. Like, you know, you want to, you know, it's just, it was a real unstable program at the time, you know, and they obviously have a, you know, insane tradition, just like Ohio State and a lot of schools, but, you know, Michigan just wasn't the right fit for the time when I was coming out, you know.
What was your relationship like with Jim Tressel, and when he kind of transitioned out and there was going to be a coaching change, did you ever consider leaving Ohio State, or were you kind of there and you were going to stick to it?
I definitely considered leaving. So I actually called Les Miles at LSU, because that was like my second favorite school that I visited. We went to a night game there when they played Arkansas, and that place is special. You know, some of those SEC schools, those night games when they're playing an SEC rival, those are sick atmospheres. So I called Les after. So this was actually when they hired Urban. I called Les because Urban didn't recruit me at University of Florida. He did, but he didn't. You know, he says he kind of did. I always give him shit for it. Like, no, you didn't. You know, like, he thought I was too fucking slow. He did. You know, he looked at, you know, he's got Aaron Hernandez running around out there at like 4.4, you know, scoring like, you know, 60-yard touchdowns, and, you know, I mean, and then he looks at me and he's like, you know, I don't know if this guy's gonna fit. So he won't admit it, but he kind of blames on like the recruiting coordinators and some of the stuff. But reality, he didn't think I would fit there. So when he got hired at Ohio State, I was kind of like, oh shit, you know, like, you know, this guy didn't want me to play down there. He didn't think I was gonna fit his system. Like, you know, what do I do now? So that's when I called Les and I just said, hey, you know, like, do you still have a spot there for me if I wanted to transfer? This was before like the new transfer rules, back when I would have had to sit out a year. But, you know, it was after my freshman year when they hired Urban. So I was like, you know what, like, rather than not playing at Ohio State for the next 3 years, I would rather just go sit out for a year, my sophomore year at LSU, and then have 2 years to play, you know, at LSU, rather than just, you know, not fit in the system at Ohio State. So then honestly, I was, you know, I had an honest conversation with Coach Meyer. Like, the first time we ever sat down, I just asked him, I said, you know, am I going to play? Like, do you see me fitting into, because I played a little bit my freshman year. So I had film out there and I was, you know, a lot of practice film and stuff like that. And I just said, do you see me playing here? And he said, yeah. He said, you know, I'm going to make my players fit the system, not a system fit the players. You know what I'm saying? So he was going to, instead of bringing his Florida system and trying to, like, you know, make us, you know, fit into that system, he was going to make the system fit us. And I'm glad he was honest and straightforward. He said, look, if you just work your ass off and, you know, give me everything you got, you know, you got a really good chance. And so I kind of took a leap of faith trusting him, because they were, back in my head, I was kind of still like, screw this dude. He didn't recruit me at Florida. Now I'm up here freezing my ass off and in Columbus, Ohio, I don't know. But then I, kind of took a leap of faith, trusting him, and it all worked out for the best. Now I love him.
Was Tom Herman your OC your sophomore year too, as well as your junior and senior?
He was all 3 years.
So what kind of impact did he have for your entirely? Yeah. I mean, he definitely had to have had some impact in you wanting to stay and stick it out at Ohio State. Am I wrong? Or
yeah, you're wrong.
I don't know. I'm asking the question.
No, I know. It's a legit question, but quite honestly, bro, like when you're a sophomore or freshman in high school, like as far as who your fucking OC is and stuff like that, you really don't get into it that much. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're going to workouts and you're going out and partying and, you're going back to workouts and then you're kind of, you know what I'm saying? It's not like, oh, who's the OC going to be like, things like that. Is he going to call good plays? Like, is he a good OC? Like, at the time when you're kind of that age, it's like, they're all coaches, they're just all coaches, and I love Tom, and he, obviously turned out to be very successful, and God, he had such a huge impact on my career and things like that. But it wasn't like, I was like, oh, Tom Herman's going to be the OC. Like, I'm going to stay because of him. Like to me, Tom Herman was just another coach from another school that Urban brought in. And, you know what I'm saying? Like at that age, you don't really, understand all that. But yeah, Coach Herman he was awesome. He was so impactful on my career, and obviously the success of, Ohio State those few years, winning the national championship our senior year. And I mean, we out-schemed Bama. That's the only reason. Pound for pound, they were probably a little bit more talented than we were. But we just had that fight, and we had, our coaches, they schemed those dudes up. Kirby Smart called Kirby Smart called Coach Herman after the game and congratulated him and said, "You got me," because we schemed them up pretty good. They were the one thing about Bama, and I don't even watch them enough now to know, but back then they were so focused defensively on being in the perfect defense against our formations. You know what I'm saying? So like when we would motion, you'd have 8 or 9 guys on the defense all look over to the sideline to get a check, because we motioned to a different formation. And so we were just fucking with them the whole game. We would do these yo-yo motions with the tight ends where I'd go over, and they'd all look back and get and then I'd go back over and then bang, and we'd just be going all over. It got annoying because like all of bull practice, we practice every day during, for bull practice, and we're doing all these motions. I'm like, you'd be fucking kidding me. I'm running all over the place, just motion, but it ended up working out obviously because, they schemed them up good, and we obviously were successful and beat them and went on to win it. So, but back to Coach Herman, phenomenal guy, great coach. Still talk to him a lot. And hope he gets it rolling at University of Texas.
No, I wanted to touch on that national championship season because you guys go from Braxton Miller to JT Barrett to Cardell Jones, and Bama's got a game plan for Cardell Jones, who they really have seen nothing on. And you sit there and say you guys were just adding yo-yo motions just to fuck with him the whole time. What kind of presence did Cardell have in that entirety of that game, that postseason run, and then compare it to what JT and Braxton brought to the team? And how did it switch over that length of the season?
It sounds kind of, I don't know. Where do I start with that question? It's like, you start the season with Braxton. So, we're in training camp and Braxton goes down and, it's ugly. He's screaming, and you kind of find out a few hours later that he needs shoulder surgery and he's done for the year. So then at the time, Cardell was actually ahead of JT Barrett on the depth chart. So, Cardell was this, because Cardell was like the big time recruit out of Glenville, big time Ohio guy, 6'5", he was like the big recruit after Braxton. And so he was actually 2 on the depth chart and JT was 3. So then after Braxton went down, they kind of had like a quarterback battle. And, you know, obviously with Coach Herman and Coach Meyer, like, you know, they put Cardell and JT through a quarterback battle. And then that's when JT ended up winning the starting job in training camp. And, you know, I can't speak highly enough of JT, just a phenomenal player, a leader. The way he took like control of the team from a leadership standpoint as a sophomore was just, you know, insane. Like, it's one thing, you know, if you're a senior quarterback or something, or like a senior tight end, like, you know, I don't want to say it's easy for me to lead or easier for me to lead, but when you're a senior and you've been there and, you know, you're the senior tight end and things, it's easier to lead the team in that position than, you know, the third string sophomore quarterback that, you know, won the starting job. You know, that's not easy from a leadership standpoint. You know, this guy was the third string quarterback going into the season. Braxton Miller is one of the best players ever played at Ohio State. You lose him, there's a lot of people saying the season's over. But the way that JT Barrett stepped up and led the team and just, you know, that whole year was just really special. I mean, one of the best leaders I've ever been around. You know, and then, you know, obviously the Michigan game at the end of the year is when I went over to, you know, I was on the field when he went down. And you can actually, if you ever see the replay of the game, you'll see it. But, you know, while I'm blocking or whatever, they blow the whistle. And, you know, I look for JT and I go over to pick him up. And he's like kind of screaming. He's like, and he's, you know, he's got his hands up for me to pick him up. And I look down and his ankle's facing the wrong fucking direction. And he's like reaching for me. He's like, you know, help me up. And I'm looking at him like, I can't. No, brother, you ain't getting up. You stay right there. You know, so like trying to get the trainers over there because it was honestly, it was facing the complete wrong direction. It was freaky. But yeah, and then so then he goes down and so then, you know, at that point, you know, we know we're a good football team, obviously. But with Cardell, you know, we just didn't really know, you know, he's kind of, you know, we knew he had talent. He's a big guy. He could throw the ball 100 yards, things like that. But that's where I think like Tom Herman, Urban Meyer, like the way that they were able to adjust schematically and things like that, as far as changing the quarterbacks, and still leading us to a national championship was insane, you know? And that's what, like, I don't know if they get enough credit for that. I know, you know, Cardell was the one out there doing it, but the way that they game planned and schemed for Cardell to have success, it was totally different than a JT Barrett or Braxton Miller. And for them to transition like that late in the year and go and play, you know, two of the best teams we probably saw all year long, it just speaks volumes to, you know, to them. And God, I mean, hats off, you know, I mean, they're two of the best coaches to, you know, obviously ever coach in college football. And yeah, so I mean, you know, I can sit here and talk. I mean, all the quarterbacks I've played with, you know, I started out with Joe Bowserman there, my rookie year or my freshman year, you know, and then the last year it was, you know, he started out with Braxton and then JT and then Cardell, and it was a special year, man. I mean, going through three quarterbacks and winning the national championship doesn't happen a whole lot. You know,
what did it mean to Braxton when you changed your number from 86 to 5 that season?
You know, so that's actually kind of a funny story. Like, it's a few days after his injury, you know, and you kind of the tears have kind of gone away, you know, and you're kind of back to, you know, hanging out, and he's in the locker room, and our lockers are right next to each other. And I don't know, we were shooting the shit one day, and he's like, bro, you should wear number 5. He's like, that'd be cold if you wear number 5. I'm like, damn, bro, really? Number 5? Like, you know, because I'm not the athletic tight end to wear a single digit, you know.
How many tight ends are there that wear a single digit?
Yeah, exactly, you know. And I'm like, you know, at first, you know, he thought he was joking, blah, blah, blah. You know, then one thing led to another, and he kind of brought it up to Coach Meyer. And then we all kind of had a discussion about it. Coach Meyer was all on board because, you know, Coach Meyer doesn't like things like that. Like, he's not big into, you know, D linemen wearing single digits and, you know, tight ends wearing single digits that just block all the time. Like, he doesn't like that flashy stuff. Like, you know, he's pretty traditional when it comes to stuff like that. And, so he signed off on it and he was cool about it. And, yeah, so, so then I wore 5, for the rest of the year. And there's, some people say it helped me get drafted a little bit higher because I was out there running around in a single digit. I looked more athletic than I really was, but yeah, it all worked out.
Being a captain on a national championship team, what did that mean to you? And how did you see yourself evolve as a leader throughout the season? And how did you carry yourself, and what did you expect out of your teammates?
Man, I mean, it kind of goes back to Coach Meyer. The way he developed me into a leader was just, kind of everything. I wasn't like I was captain in high school and things like that, but when you get to that level and, everybody's good, everybody's an All-American and things like that, like, you got to learn how to lead. And that was the biggest thing that Coach Meyer taught me, was basically how to lead, and it's not black and white. It's not like that. Leadership it's very fluid. And so, the way he taught me how to lead and how to lead different guys, because not all guys respond to the same type of leadership. And that was one of the biggest things that he kind of taught me, and I kind of picked up on over my, first couple of years with him. So then my senior year, when I was ready to be, like the captain and that full-time leader, I was ready for it. They're all, guys come from all different backgrounds, and everybody has different personalities. And some guys respond better to fear. Some guys respond better to, encouragement, some, things like that. If a guy drops a ball, you need to learn how does he respond to leadership? Do you go get on his ass and say, come on, brother, you need to, like, catch the fucking ball out there, or is he one of those guys you need to put your arm around him and say, brother, it's all right. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'll get at the next one, things like that. And everybody's kind of different. And those are kind of simple examples, but you just kind of get the pulse for the guys you're leading and the team. And you kind of get a pulse for the whole thing. And the way he taught me that, I mean, Coach Meyer is, in my book, the greatest leader, ever. I mean, the guy is so much smarter than just a football coach, is what a lot of people don't understand. Like, yeah, he's so smart with X's and O's, and he invented the spread offense with Chip Kelly and, and some GA room in fucking Bowling Green, locked in a closet. Him and Chip Kelly literally grew up the spread offense, I mean, seriously, that's how it happened.
Yeah.
So X's and O's, the guy's a genius, but what people don't understand is, like, he's way more. I mean, he was a psych major in college. He's smart as shit. You know what I'm saying? He knows people's minds. He knows how to lead. He knows, I mean, and that's what really separates him from the rest of the, X's and O geniuses that, are around the country. So I owe my leadership ability to him because, what he taught me and how he taught me, it was probably the greatest thing I've ever learned. It's kind of carried me from there and, just into the next part of your life. And that's one of the best things about Coach Meyer is how he can mold guys, not just for football, but like life after football, because he's just as serious about mentoring you and molding you for the rest of your life as he is, the 4 years at Ohio State. And
yeah. I wanted to follow up with your relationship with Coach Meyer. I wanted to ask you about the tattoo story.
Yeah, he never got that fucking tattoo. Yeah.
Never?
No, he'll get it though one day. When I move back to Columbus, I'll start getting on his ass about it.
Can you explain that story to our listeners?
Yeah, so he said if we won the national championship that he'd get a fucking tattoo.
Where?
I don't know. But he said it. And he said it publicly. He said it publicly too.
Oh, that's fucked up.
I know. And yeah, he said if we won the national, I think it was like sometime after I forget when it was. It might have been after we lost to Virginia Tech, like early in the year, where it really wasn't looking like we were headed for the national championship. But somehow he said it publicly or something. People ask me about that all the time. And yeah, he said he was going to get the tattoo, and he still never got the tattoo. So we'll get it one day. I'll shoot you a text of the picture of it when I finally get him to get it.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Do you know the background story behind Cardell Jones beating the kid in the hospital 98-35 in Madden or NCAA 14? Do you know anything about that story or not?
No, I don't.
So your guys' senior year, before you guys went to the national championship, I'm pretty sure he went to the hospital in Columbus and played a kid in NCAA and playing with himself against someone. And like he had 17 for 19, 400 yards, 12 carries, 200 yards, 7 touchdowns. And he beat the kid 98-35. I didn't know if you knew anything about that, but when I grew up,
about it. That's hilarious.
Yeah, he beat the wheels off someone in NCAA.
That's hilarious. Cardell's a good guy. He's a good dude. I like Cardell.
When Urban Meyer decided to step down, were you surprised by it? What was your reaction? Were you disappointed? And what do you think about the job Ryan Day's doing currently at OSU?
Was I surprised? No. Was I disappointed that guys weren't going to get to experience what I experienced with Urban? Yeah, because I mean, I could sit here and talk to you guys for hours about Urban and how phenomenal he is and the ins and outs of his coaching and his leadership and mentorship. And I mean, it's just, I was sad for the guys that weren't going to get to experience it and be molded by him. Was I surprised? No, because the way he does it is so intense and so, I mean, he doesn't take a fucking minute off of the day. I mean, it's insane. I mean, the dude.
What time does he wake up at?
Who knows? I don't even know if he sleeps really. I mean, you know, well, I do know he slept when he got to Ohio State, but at University of Florida, that was one of the reasons he resigned, because he didn't fucking sleep. I mean, he would stay in the office all day and all night. You know, he'd sleep on the couch in his office. And that was one of the reasons that, you know, he left Florida, because he wasn't in a great, you know, mental place. I mean, that's not healthy. But, you know, so I think he did sleep a little bit at Ohio State, but like, you know, the guy just all day long, his brain never turns off. Never. I mean, you know, like there's a funny story. When I was either a sophomore or like a junior, you know, and so Urban and I are sitting there, you know, we run into each other in the hallway, we pass each other, and, you know, so he starts making small talk with me, and I never remember it. He started asking me about, you know, what I did. I think we just come back from a break, and like he started asking me about, you know, what I did on the break, and I started talking to him. I was hog hunting on the break, and I kind of started talking about the hog hunting, and this dude just fucking straight up turns around and walks away right in the middle of me telling a story. And I'm like, you know, like, what the fuck? Like, you know, there's one of our other operations guys was right there with me. And I'm like, what the fuck? You know, did I say something wrong? Like, and I was young at the time. Like, I didn't know Urban, how he works, you know, at that time. Now I do understand it, but like, that's an example of him. Like, if I'm sitting there trying to tell him a story about hog hunting, and he probably had something going on about a play or a defense or an offensive play, you know, something he was in, and he doesn't apologize or like say, hey, you know, like, that's really cool. Like, I'm going to get going now. The way his brain works, and it's not like he might come off as an asshole to somebody that doesn't know him. Like, at the time I was like, what the fuck is this asshole? I'm in the middle of a story, but like, that's just how his brain works. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's always on, all day long. I mean, he walks on his little treadmill on top of the weight room, and you'd walk by, and like, you know, you'd kind of look up there, and he'd call you over there, and he'd be like, oh shit. Like, you know, and like, you'd go up there and he'd start getting into the play from yesterday's practice. Like, you know, the one play you fucked up or like he didn't like or something, you know? And I'm like, dude, it's lunchtime. You're casually walking on the treadmill. Like, you know, I don't know, read a book, watch the TV that's on right there. You know, like he's nonstop. And that's what makes him phenomenal. And that's why I understood him resigning and stepping down and retiring, is because it takes a lot of, you know, for him, he doesn't have that happy medium, you know, like in the off seasons, like he can't just kind of like, you know, dim it down a little bit and say like, okay, you know, I'm going to work at 50% now because it's February or March, you know what I'm saying? Like the guy is always going, go, 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 go. And it's not always football. You know what I'm saying? Like it's more than just that. That's what a lot of people don't understand with him is it's more than football. Like, I mean, it'll be, just all the off-season stuff he does and the way he's mentors guys and things like that. That's what makes him so special is just it's nonstop and it's more than football. And you combine those two, I understand why he retired. And I'm sorry, but then to go to your point about Ryan Day, he's phenomenal. I mean, you have one conversation with the guy, and if you've been around, elite head coaches and elite, people in the football world, it's like, I mean, you can have one conversation and figure out like, yeah, this fucking guy's got it. Yeah, there's a reason that they fucking handed the Ohio State football program over to this guy. It's, it doesn't take a fucking rocket scientist to, it's like anybody could figure it out. You talk to the guy and you're like, yeah, he's got it. Like, yeah, he's going to be a really good fucking coach. It's like, that's just, he's got that it. He's got that it factor where, it's hard to explain what it is or exact pinpoint one thing, but he's got it. And you talk to him once and you'll know. So I'm, very thrilled that he's there. And, what he's done obviously so far. And with Coach Meyer, I think one of those things about Coach Meyer is like, is he really like completely done in Ohio State? No, he's too fucking crazy. He's too crazy to be completely done. You know what I'm saying? I guarantee you he knows that roster inside and out. He's watching some of their practice film. I mean, he's too crazy to literally just have nothing to do with that program that he pretty much restarted from the bottom. Because we were bad when he got there. I mean, we were a bad team my freshman year, and then he got there and he literally basically started us from the bottom again. So he's too crazy to be completely hands off. I know that.